The issue now that Andrew Cuomo is bringing up in New York is that he is a Ugandan citizen. Uganda is a country where they kill homosexuals.
So somebody who is a dual citizen can't be mayor of New York, or?
I would renounce, if I was the dual citizen with a country whose policy, government policy, was we kill homosexuals, yeah, I would renounce that citizenship. I don't, and to not, and he also,
I think that is buying into a fear framework that is not
fear
good.
Of killing homosexuals,
it's not good for the country. It's not good for the country.
Something snapped on HBO this weekend, and it didn't come from the right. It came from the last man the Democrats thought would ever hold the match. Bill Maher walked onto that stage looking calm, almost too calm, like a guy who'd been holding a secret for 6 months and finally decided the audience deserved to hear it. Then he opened his mouth, and the whole liberal internet froze. This wasn't a hot take. This wasn't a bit. This was a lifelong Democrat picking up a mirror, turning it toward his own party and saying, "Look at what you've become. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the whole rising wing." Maher didn't roast them. He autopsied them on camera in real time. And the second the clip hit X, the timeline went nuclear. But stay with me, because what he said in the first 90 seconds, that was just the appetizer. Hit subscribe now, because the further we go, the darker this gets.
Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Mayor Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, "Elect more communists."
Here's where it gets surgical. Maher didn't invent an attack line. He didn't need to. He just read Mamdani's own inner circle back to the camera, word for word. The advisors, the strategists, the people whispering in the new Golden Boy's ear. And what were they saying out loud, in public, with their real names attached? Elect more communists, not progressives, not democratic socialists, communists. The word your grandparents fled countries to escape. And Maher didn't flinch. He didn't soften it. He read it like a doctor reading a diagnosis nobody in the room wanted to hear. And that's the part the Democratic establishment can't survive. Because when a Fox host says it, half the country tunes out. When Bill Maher says it, the other half suddenly starts listening. This wasn't a political jab. This was a betrayal from inside the bloodline.
It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country. And this is the pendulum never lands in the middle problem I'm always about. Really, the choices we get here are either the worst version of crony capitalism or communism, either a side deal for the Trump family every time he does business overseas, or the lady who says, impoverish the white middle class. Oh yeah, there's a great campaign slogan for it.
For months, the party has been running the same con. Dress up the radical, slap a smile on him, call him fresh, call him young energy, call him anything except what he actually is. Maher wasn't buying a single second of it. He called it what it was, a phase, a pose, a dress-up game the Democrats are playing while the rest of the country stares in disbelief. And here's the moment the room shifted. Maher looked dead into the camera and said the quiet part loud. Voters are not stupid. They see the outfit. They see the makeup. They see the script. And every time the party tries to rebrand extremism as the future, the middle of America takes another step toward the exit. That's not analysis. That's a eulogy delivered in real time by a man who still holds the party's membership card.
It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home?
But wait, because the story doesn't stop at Mamdani. It stops at the person standing right behind him. Maher pulled back the curtain and revealed the name nobody in the mainstream press wanted to say out loud. The new housing chief. The person now holding the keys to real estate in the financial capital of planet Earth. Her position on private property? It shouldn't exist. Her position on homeowners? They're the villains. Her position on the very idea of ownership? A system of oppression. Read that back to yourself, slowly. This isn't a college dorm room debate. This is New York City. Trillions of dollars, millions of families, skyscrapers older than most countries. and the woman deciding who gets to live where thinks the concept of a deed is racist. Maher didn't just raise an eyebrow. He raised an alarm, and the internet heard it echo.
The kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing.
Then Maher did what nobody expected. He didn't just argue. He brought the body camera footage of history itself. Venezuela, a country that used to feed South America, now begging for insulin. North Korea, where the lights literally don't turn on. Maher laid it out like a courtroom exhibit. If it couldn't work in a state of maple syrup and Subarus, what exactly makes anyone think it works in a metro of 8.5 million people, half of whom don't even agree on which subway line to take? That's not policy. That's cosplay with a budget.
Welcome home. Problem is, Gen Z thinks socialism's wired and capitalism's tired and billionaires are what's for dinner. And who can blame them? If you're 30 and still sharing a bathroom with roommates, capitalism isn't working for you. People will reject any economic system where there's strange hair on the soap. No one wants to be approaching middle age and still writing their name on food before they put it in the fridge. So they're quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to fuck.
And this is where Maher did something rare, something almost nobody on cable news is brave enough to do. He admitted the kids have a point, not the answer, but the pain. He looked into the lens and said young people aren't chasing revolution because they read manifestos. They're chasing it because rent ate their paycheck. Groceries doubled. A one-bedroom in Queens costs more than a mortgage did in 2005. Insurance is a scam wrapped in a maze. And the American dream now costs $2,400 a month before you've even eaten. Maher didn't mock the generation. He mocked the medicine they were being handed. And that's what made this monologue lethal. He wasn't punching down. He was punching the pharmacists selling snake oil to broke 20-somethings who deserve real answers, not TikTok slogans dressed up as economics.
At this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in. In 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that shit again. We've had enough of Trump's macho and also enough of pussy politics. The guy couldn't help himself. These democratic socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegates suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Oh, for this. Really? This is who the Democrats are thinking of following. Chuck Schumer ain't perfect, but at least he doesn't crumple into a heap when confronted with Chanel No. 5.
Then came the montage that broke Twitter in half. Because what did the movement behind Mamdani actually look like when the cameras caught it unfiltered? Jazz hands instead of applause, because clapping is now considered harmful. A ban on scented anything, because someone in row 4 might get a headache. COVID masks in the year 2026 worn like fashion accessories at an indoor political rally, and the country watched. And the country laughed. Maher wasn't cruel about it. He didn't have to be. The footage did the work. Because meanwhile, and this is the punch, Abigail Spanberger walked into Virginia, ran straight down the middle, and won. Mamdani ran off the cliff and called the free fall progress. One of those blueprints wins elections. The other one gets stitched into a Republican Super Bowl ad.
One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won in districts Trump also won, all moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win. And Democrats should recognize the party moved too far left on social issues after Obama left office. Gosh, if only someone had been saying that all along.
And here comes the frame nobody else on television will draw. Maher pointed at both sides of the room and said the words the political consultants dread. On one wall, Trump-style deals, favors, family enrichment, the crony capitalism circus. On the other wall, Mamdani-style redistribution, property seizure, ideological purity tests. And squeezed between those two walls, you, the nurse, the teacher, the electrician, the single mom stretching a paycheck across 14 days of groceries. Maher wasn't asking for a hero. He wasn't asking for a savior. He was begging, literally begging, for one Democrat, just one, capable of walking into a room and sounding like a grown adult with a working calculator. And the horrifying part? He couldn't name one. Not on the current stage. Not with a spotlight on it. Silence. That's the answer. And silence is louder than any monologue he's ever delivered.
Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal? It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores.
And then a moment nobody saw coming. A sitting Democratic senator on Maher's own couch said the sentence the party has spent a decade denying. The working class is gone. The union guys are gone. The young men are gone. Not stolen, not tricked, not hypnotized by memes. They walked out. They walked out because their own party called them the villain, called them toxic, called them privileged for having a truck, a job, and a chapel. And now, and this is the twist that stings, the very wing that shoved them out the door is doubling down. Mamdani in the front seat, AOC riding shotgun. The same messaging that torched a coalition is now being pumped through a bigger loudspeaker. Maher has been sounding this siren for years. Nobody listened. And the price of that deafness is showing up in every county map, every exit poll, every diner in Pennsylvania.
Well, they're doing better.
I mean, well, without a doubt, though, you know, there's part of the Democratic Party became more and more anti-men, or describing that they were part of the problem, or they have toxic traits, and for those things. And that's why there's been such a big migration away from the Democratic Party, from young men, and that's really why why we lost in 2024. Now, if you identify anyone as the problem or blame them for some things, then you're going to lose.
And then Maher delivered the closer. No hesitation, no teleprompter dance. Just the sentence that will define the next election cycle. This isn't left versus right anymore. It's normal versus insane. And every time the Democrats grab the microphone and hand it to the loudest extremist in the room, another neighborhood, another county, another generation quietly slides across the aisle. Mamdani isn't the future. He's the flare gun. AOC isn't the next generation of leadership. She's the trailer for the next Republican landslide. And the only reason anybody in mainstream media is saying it out loud tonight is because one comedian, one HBO monologue, one lifelong liberal finally stopped whispering. So the question isn't whether Maher is right. Everyone in that studio already knew he was. The real question is, will his party listen before the funeral or after? Drop your verdict in the comments. Smash the like, subscribe if you want the next one. Because trust me, the next one gets even louder.